from the Voodoo Dome in New Orleans, second week in a row where the New Orleans Saints are hosting a big primetime game. Welcome back to Get Sharp, everybody. Joe Fortenbaugh and our guy Chuck Esposito.
Joe, how are you today?
Doing well, Chuck. We got one big game we want to take a look at before we wrap up the weekend and move to Week 14, and that's a primetime showdown that's been flexed into this game. New England,
you gotta love the flex schedule.
Get out of here.
It's much better than New England and Indianapolis, let me tell you.
Well, it's only a 20-point line in that game, so at least everyone thinks it'll be close. 7-4 Detroit heads to 8-3 New Orleans in a game that shows two teams heading in opposite directions. New Orleans, unstoppable at home. 5-0, they've covered the spread in all of them. They're averaging over 40 points a game at home. One of the toughest home field advantages in the league. Detroit, on the other side, they've struggled as of late. They're coming in on extra rest. When you take a look at this game, big line, about 9 points for the New Orleans Saints. How does Detroit go in here and keep it close and try to keep their playoff hopes alive against a team that's very tough to beat at home?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think Detroit may come into this game a little bit flat. Everybody talked about on Thanksgiving their biggest game in a decade. That was their playoff game. They got beat handily. They've only won twice in the last 6 weeks. Those two wins against the Broncos with Tim Tebow and against the Carolina Panthers with a young quarterback in Cam Newton. They haven't beaten anybody in 6 weeks with a winning record. After starting 5-0, they're 2-4. I think they're reeling a little bit. They're without Sue. Kevin Smith's kind of iffy at this point. Very tough spot to go against the Saint team that's 5-0 at home and has covered all 5 games.
Starting to peak a little bit too since that loss to St. Louis. It's almost like this team has woken up a bit. Let's talk about the loss of Sue, as you mentioned. He's out for 2 games after the head stomping incident on Thanksgiving. How much does a player like that affect the line? We saw when Jay Cutler went out for the Oakland game, it was about a 5-point swing with Caleb Haney. Does a guy like Sue have an effect? Could it move 1 or 2 points, or is that not taken as much into account?
And not nearly when it's a defensive player like that. You'd like to think so, but you look at the Lions, they're going to put Nick Fairley in. They're going to expect him to really pick up the slack somewhat. A quarterback is much, much bigger. I think you look at the Lions as a whole. I mean, they really have to come into this game. I think it's more serious if they're losing 2 DBs. They're banged up in the secondary, and it's a bad team to be banged up in the secondary against the Saints. So I think they got their hands full against that Saint team, however, who has not had a lot of success, as we talked about, coming off Monday night wins.
That's alluding right into my next question. 2 trends that we've already talked about now. The Saints 5-0 at home against the spread this season, but 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 weeks coming off Monday night games. Which one do we take more into account?
You know, it's hard to go against the Saints here. I think this game does become a shootout. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Lions stay within the number. I think they're going to play a much better game than they did on Thanksgiving. There was just so much hype and so much pressure on that young team. I think they play a better game here. I think they keep it close on Sunday night.
Frustrating, too, because they gave the Packers their best punch in the first half and had 0 points to show for it in that game. We talked about points in this one. These 2 teams rank in the top 4 in the league in scoring, but their defenses are in the bottom half of the league in points allowed. Number's a big one in this one, 53.5 points. Do you think we're going to get close to that?
I think we will. The number was awfully big in the Thanksgiving game between the Packers and Lions. We didn't get anywhere close. I think in this case you do. I think both teams open it up. I think the Lions play a much better game again than they did on Thanksgiving. Without Sue, without the 2 DBs, I think they're going to give up points. The Saints come off that big win. I think they're going to give up points. But I think this is a shootout on Sunday night.
Calvin Johnson, what do you think about his numbers for this game?
God, the guy's just a beast. He is unbelievable. My opinion, best wide receiver in the National Football League right now. And I think next year in the fantasy football, this guy could easily be a top 5 or 6 pick as a wideout because of Stafford, the way the offense runs through him. I think he's just a beast.
Last question. You always say that if you want to play the dog, and if you're going to play the dog, you got to believe they can win the game.
Absolutely.
Do you believe Detroit can win this game?
I think they can win the game. I absolutely think they can win the game.
There it is. Excellent stuff, Mr. Esposito. We'll see you next week for some more rundowns. We got a lot of bowl stuff going on at Lagasse Stadium in the near future. We'll keep you posted on that. But for now, enjoy the Sunday night game, and we'll see you for Week 14. Thanks a lot, everybody.